Hello everyone and welcome back to another Minecraft Snapshot video. This is 24W44A for Java edition 1.21.4, which will be known as the winter drop. That's because this content, including the creaking and the pale garden biome, are no longer behind the experimental changes. They are now a part of this snapshot cycle. And if you're subscribed to my channel, then you already would have seen much of the content that's been added to the snapshot, as we got to see it last week over on the Bedrock edition of the game. So as we go over all of this new content once again, I'm going to do my best to make it really clear where the new content in this snapshot is between the stuff we've already seen from Bedrock. Let's start with the Wandering Trader. These changes might have been in the Bedrock edition, but it wasn't mentioned in the changelog, so I didn't think to go and look, but its trades have been updated. Aha, what's this? A pale oak sapling for 5 emeralds. We can also get the pale hanging moss for a single emerald, and the open eyeblossom for an emerald too. According to the changelog, they don't trade the closed eyeblossom. 2 pale moss blocks for a single emerald. The final trade is for resin clumps. But as you can probably tell, I've started to lose my patience here. And those prices that you saw, they're fixed. They're not randomized with each wandering trader. Next, we're going to take a look at the new Eyeblossom flower. Just before we do, I want to take a moment to say lots of you watching aren't actually subscribed, so please consider hitting that button. It'll make it more likely for you to catch these snapshot videos. So if you want to stay up to date with all the Minecraft changes, then please do that. Thank you for listening. Let's crack on. So the Eyeblossom flower is a new addition to the pale garden biome. It generates naturally inside of here. It is a little on the rare side, so if you have a very small one of these biomes like this one, you might get a little unfortunate when it comes to trying to find these. You can, however, bone meal the grass to generate these flowers. Unlike Bedrock Edition though, you can't bone meal the flowers directly to make them spread. Now I've gone ahead and changed the time to night, which means that these flowers will start changing to their other state, the open eyeblossom. And when you break one of these flowers based on what state it's in, that's the one that will drop and go into your inventory. If we bone meal the grass here at night, it will generate these flowers in the state that corresponds to the time of day. These flowers also influence the speed at which the other ones around them will change to the other state based on the time of day. So we go ahead and make it daytime. We'll see all of these things change rather rapidly, which is quite different from Bedrock. Here on Java, that effect happens really fast. So during the night, they open up, and during the day, they will close. If these flowers are put inside the end dimension or the nether, they won't change at all because those dimensions don't have day-night cycles. We can use the 2 flowers to make different dyes. We've got grey, and the open variant will make orange. If you make Suspicious Stew using the open variant, you will get the blindness effect. And if you use the closed variant, you will get nausea. Let's go ahead and consume the closed one. There's the nausea effect. And let's go and consume the other one. And now we're blind. So the next few things I'm going to show you related to this flower, we didn't see on the Bedrock edition. But obviously you could probably put these into flower pots. I just didn't think to check it out. Similar to that, this next visual effect I'm going to show you might have been on a Bedrock, but it's definitely using something that is new to vanilla Minecraft. That is the ability for emissive textures. So if I go ahead and clear the night vision that I've got here, you can see that the eye of the flower is very visible in the darkness. You might recall me showing you this earlier in the year when it was first added. It allowed some parts of a texture to render fully bright even when in low lighting. And that is how these flowers work. By the way, in today's Bedrock Preview Edition, a particle effect was added. Let's go and set the time to day and wait for the flowers to change. There they go, you get a grey particle. And when it goes from day to night, you get an orange one. Pretty cool. So here's something we've already seen on the Bedrock edition of the game, but let's find out how bees interact with these flowers on Java, because it seems slightly different. They seem on average less interested in these flowers, but occasionally some of them do pathfind to them, and when they do, they get poisoned on initial contact, only for a short amount of time. If either player hold either the closed or the open eyeblossom, I can lure the bees like you can with most flowers, and using either of these will cause the bee to become poisoned. It has also not put them into breeding mode, and if I'm in survival, They don't like me. These bees are attacking a skeleton. What's going on? So I'm guessing the skeleton shot at me right as I gave the flower to the bee, which confused me because they turned angry, but then they decided to attack the skeleton. Anyway, they won't get angry at me, the player, for poisoning them. Also new in this snapshot, the wither rose, when fed to a bee, will wither it instead of the normal behavior of a flower. And as you can see, that wither effect is only for like a second, so it does a tiny amount of damage. So if you saw the Bedrock video, you'll know all about this new block called Resin, which is obtained by attacking a Creaking and then following the particle effects to the tree that has its Creaking Heart. When we do this, it's now going to generate resin around the Creaking Heart. Let's go ahead and punch this guy one more time. And you can see that a reasonable amount of resin has spread over here. When I punch this stuff in survival, it drops and it also instantly breaks. And a quick amendment, I noticed this and it's in the changelog. The resin clumps are now only going to spread to the sides of the pale oak logs. They're not going to spread onto other blocks. And there is a cooldown for how quickly you can actually attack this guy. It's every 5 seconds. So if I keep punching it, we have to wait 5 seconds before it will then connect with the Creaking Heart and make more resin. The one other place you can obtain resin is in a Woodland Mansion's loot chest. The resin clumps have 3 main uses. First of all, you can use them as armor trim material, giving you this nice orangey color. And I've gone ahead and decked myself out with a full set so you can see what it looks like when it's equipped on a player. The second use of this resin clump is to be able to place it down like we've already seen. But you can do this on any block, so use your imagination. This is a way to bring like another level of texture to your block palette. This, for example, you could imagine as an orange tree, or maybe underground in a cave, you want to sell the idea of there being a brand new fancy ore block. Its final use is for blocks. If you smelt this stuff, you'll get yourself some resin brick. This can be used to craft resin bricks like so. They can be then used in the stone cutter to create the slab, the stair, and the wall variety, as well as a chiseled one. And as you can imagine, the same recipes apply inside of a crafting table. So the texture is a bright, bold one, very saturated, and the chiseled block clearly has the face of the Creaking Mob on it, which is a nice touch. Oh, and forgive me, there is also the block of resin, which is quite a wild, bubbly looking texture. This is made using your resin clumps in a 3x3 grid. And here's something that was mentioned in the changelog. This block is kind of like a block of raw material that we've seen introduced to the game to help you store this stuff and uncraft it so you can make your iron ore like so. Well, you can see there's a similarity between the resin clump and the iron ore texture here. This is supposed to work the same way around. Look at that. So you can use these blocks to store lots of resin clumps. Another thing mentioned in this snapshot's changelog that wasn't in the Bedrock one is the default tool for this is a pickaxe. This is how you're supposed to break this block. There is something slightly different for the block of resin like this. You can actually instant mine it without having to use a tool. I find that quite an interesting choice, and I think I like it, mainly because instant breaking blocks is kind of satisfying, and they can be a useful form of scaffolding. So if we can make some easy resin farms, then these blocks might gain some other uses for this property. Next, we're going to focus on changes with the Pale Garden biome itself, but we're taking a moment to look at the new panorama that's been added for the Winter Drop update. Obviously, it's the Pale Garden biome, and as they do, each update that we get a new panorama in the background. So if you were paying attention earlier in this video, you may have noticed some new leafy particle effects coming out of these leaf blocks inside of the Pale Garden biome. It is not exclusive to the biome though. I thought I'd go ahead and check this. Wherever you place these leaf blocks, they're now going to emit these particle effects. This is clearly to add a little more atmosphere to this already eerie and mysterious biome. To further enrich its atmosphere and focus on the sound design that's been done here, if some of the game's incidental music is playing while you're exploring and you enter the Pale Garden biome, it's going to simply cut that music off. So then you'll just be hearing the ambient sounds that emanate from the biome. And in previous updates, trial chambers weren't able to generate inside of the Pale Garden biome. That's been changed, so you can now find some of these underneath that biome. Today's update changelog also clarifies if you grow one of these trees with bone meal and saplings, you don't get any of the details generating onto the tree. It's only ones that generate naturally that can have some of the pale hanging moss coming from it, and also the creaking heart. So you can't get a creaking heart by growing a tree with saplings. The sword was recently given a buff to its block breaking speed of the carpet, which has been undone. The diamond hoe is now the only default tool for the pale moss blocks. Pale hanging moss will break instantly when it's mined, and to obtain this you need either silk touch or shears. Next up, changes to the creaking heart. I found one here that is naturally generated so that I can break it with my silk touch axe, and you'll see that it drops itself and it gives me some experience. You'll get between 20 and 24 points of experience for breaking it, even if you got silk touch. If you break this block without silk touch, it will drop between 1 and 3 resin. This can be influenced by fortune free, so if you use this, you're more likely to get more resin. And if you want to craft one of your own, you can do this with a resin block. You place that in the middle of 2 logs to craft a creaking heart. Next, we're going to look at the changes to the creaking itself, which now does more damage. Like on Bedrock, it'll do 1.5 hearts of damage, but I am using resistance so that we can check out its animations. And yes, its attack animations is as wild as derpy as on Bedrock Edition. Hang on a second, what happened to my resistance? Oh, I forgot to set it to 255. We already knew this, but now it's in the changelog. The Creaking Mob will scare away pillagers and illagers. This includes the Evoker and also the Ravager. Or maybe not now. It was definitely scared of it last time we checked, but now it doesn't seem so. Let's double check the Evoker and the Vindicator. Nope, those two still do the off. Other changes include the creaking ignoring cactus, sweetberry bushes, and powder snow damage, and they can now walk through/over them. Creaking is now fire resistant, and the creaking heart can remove a creaking if it turns to day. We already knew that. But if the creaking is too far away from the creaking heart, we knew that too. For this last one, a player intersects with the creaking for a few seconds. On Bedrock, that was described as being in a hole with a creaking. So if you did actually find yourself in a hole, this can be difficult to get out of because you'd only be able to punch the creaking and it doesn't take damage. So after 5 seconds, it'll disappear. Next up, we have a developer's note. We made it so that any block that drops when its support is broken will also drop when mined with any tool. It seemed unfair that breaking a block could directly destroy it if it was possible to obtain it with any tool just by breaking the block below. They are referring to this. Breaking a pressure plate would just yield nothing normally, yet you could punch a scaffolding and get the item. So now you can just break this and get the item. This applies to the bell, the lantern and soul lantern, all of the copper doors, iron doors, and a bunch of the different pressure plates. A brewing stand can now be broken with any tool and it will drop. And if you break an ender chest with the incorrect tool, it will drop 8 obsidian instead of nothing. Other changes in this snapshot include some tweaks to the nether brick textures. The creaking heart has been changed slightly too. Then we have red nether bricks receiving a subtle tweak. And it seems that the pale oak textures for hanging signs and regular signs has changed too. This comes with some other changes in the resource pack, which has added the new block models and textures for the stuff we've seen added in this snapshot, as well as improving the GUI sprites of things like toast pop-ups and advancements, which means it's easier to customize these with a resource pack. And similarly, we have some data pack changes for some of the new features we've seen in the winter drop. This includes some changes to the attribute command, TNT minecart data, and text components. As always, you can find a link to the article in the description box down below to see the full list of changes. And when it comes to bug fixes in this snapshot, you can see we've got quite a few oldies here that have been in the game for a long time. However, I think only a handful of them were worth mentioning. If you've ever used control pick block, you'll know this bug. It just gives you a new item, even if you've already got one in your inventory. The villager trading window not closing when a villager leaves its interaction range. And putting a written book into an item frame wouldn't display its name unless renamed with an anvil. So now when you sign your book, You can put it into the item frame and the name displays. Another long-standing issue is the ability for certain blocks to slow down the player when they are in creative mode flying around. Scaffolding was one of these blocks, so now when I fly through it, it doesn't slow down my movement. Last but not least, the Ender Dragon doesn't take any damage from melee attacks unless hit a certain way. I fought the Ender Dragon on occasion and just felt like my melee hits weren't landing, and reading this bug report, it seems like that might be patched in this update. But I do not have the time right now to go and check that out and see if it feels any better, so I'm going to wrap the video up right here. If you enjoyed it, be sure to leave a like. Thanks as always for the support, and I'll see you soon with another Snapshot video. Bye bye.